NIL is an issue for some. It's a benefit and a weapon for others. Ohio State, you've heard a lot of friction around there, and hopefully they're getting their act together. Iowa, I know most of you probably aren't following the minute-to-minute goings-on in Iowa City, but Gary Barta up there is the athletic director. And then Brad Heinrichs, I believe, is the name of the guy who runs the Swarm Collective. That's just the name of Iowa football's collective. And there's been a nice little back and forth, nice little rift, good old-fashioned rift, if you will, between Mr. Heinrichs and the collective there and the athletic department. And the athletic department is sort of cold-shouldering, if not outright stonewalling, the collective. And those folks you see in the B-roll, Iowa fans, they're caught in the middle. They're not caught in the middle at all. They're a little aggravated at their athletic department right now because they perceive their AD and their athletic department's approach to be very antiquated and very, very backwards thinking. And they are looking at their athletic department and worried. They're not alone. It's just Iowa's the poster child for this right now. They're worried that they're voluntarily handcuffing themselves while some of their rivals look at them as they disappear into the distance. Not good, right? Well, there's a lot going on there. And they're going to tell you Title IX. It's BS. This does not start and end with Title IX. Title IX is a convenient excuse that a lot of people put on this. And by that, for those of you unfamiliar with what's going on up here, the Brad Heinrichs of the world, and just fill in the blank, your university, your collective, here's what they want. They want to be able to raise money to pay the players. That's what they want. I think we all get that. That's legal, by the way. And what they need is access to some information that the athletic department has. For instance, it would go a long way for your local collective to have access to things like email lists, donor sheets. Some universities have been very hesitant to hand that information over. And there are several reasons why. Now, on the surface, apparently Iowa's trying to tell you, well, we can't do this until we can make sure that we're in compliance with Title IX. Your collective's not beholden to Title IX rules. Your university would be. If your university was cutting checks to players, that's why that's not the way it works right now. Maybe in the future we see things change. Your collective's not beholden to that. So anyone who tells you it's a Title IX thing is trying to cover up the real reason. Here's the real reason. And I'm just going to tell you like it is, and then they can make whatever they want of it. There are some programs out there who are football first at the expense of everything else, because they will look you in the eye and say, football funds everything around here, get out of football's way. That is how I run Pate State, for example. There are other programs that look at college football and they say, that's great, but you know, what about women's golf? What about track and field? I'm not here to rain on women's golf or track and field. I'm for as many scholarship programs and as many opportunities for people to advance themselves academically and athletically as possible. Sound like an athletic director right now. I'm all for that. Here is the problem, and here's why some of your ADs are very hesitant to hand over that information to your collective. They know when that collective gets their hands on those donor lists, those donors are going to be coerced willingly into redirecting a lot of their donation money solely to football. And a lot of the ways that those administrators got in the positions they are because coaches of non-football sports with clout put them there. So those non-football coaches behind the scenes are knocking on the door saying, don't you dare hang us out to dry. I need my new indoor putting green. Like we over at track and field, we on the baseball team, we need things, and we're not going to get them if all our donors are just putting money into a collective to go play football players or go pay football players. That's valid, okay? So you can understand how there are a lot of qualms that some people have. First time I've used qualm this year. A lot of qualms that some non-football related entities would have. Nevertheless, that's where we are today. Now, I don't think this is going to be a problem forever. I think the Iowas of the world are eventually going to get their act together. I don't think Gary Barta is selfish. I don't think the guy's stupid. I think he's got tons more on his plate behind the scenes than you could ever imagine. Having said that, It's a big boy position. It's a heat position, and that's where he's got to operate. Otherwise, you got to bow out and let somebody else sit in that AD chair. So ultimately, I think they'll get that figured out. Here is why I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this portion, the internal squabbling with the collectives. The conversation around NIL, I think, is going to change. And I think it's going to change pretty rapidly. You may look at it right now and say, oh, this is a mess. And to some degree it is. You have got to cry before you even crawl. And you got to crawl before you walk. And you got to walk before you run. And you even stumble at times when you do that. But eventually, you get this whole walking thing, you get this whole life thing figured out, and then you become a functioning adult. Well, in the grand scheme of things, in the NIL world, we're still crying. We're still having to be fed by bottle. We don't even have our feet under us yet. There is coming a day, though, where in the NIL world, we do have our feet under us, collectively, pun intended. And at that point, guys, I really don't think the collectives conversation is going to be at the forefront of a lot of the squabbling and a lot of the arguing. Now, the arguing may remain. I think you're going to find the talking points will radically shift because the focus will radically shift. And in the future, you'll go from saying NIL, which is this holistic term right now. It's the umbrella that you put over everything that involves paying players. You'll go from just talking about NIL to compartmentalizing NIL. And that's the reality. That's the way it works now. It's just not talked about this way. You want to talk about NIL the proper way, you don't just say NIL. You talk about different compartments. One compartment is roster value, and that is absolutely how much they'll pay you to come play football for them right now. But the other is brand value. Brand value is going to dominate the conversation. Down the road, if not nearly immediately. Brand value is not how much money can I get from a collective. Brand value is because I go play middle linebacker for Penn State, T-Mobile wants to have interest in me. Or the local Ford dealership wants to have interest in me. Basically the truer spirit of NIL. Right now, it's mom and pop as it relates to how that all operates. That's going to change. It's going to change really quickly. Because here's the hard truth, and this is not a bad thing for players. It's a tough pill to swallow initially, but once you swallow it, you realize, oh my goodness, this pill just opened up a whole new world for me. The value is not in the left tackle who plays for LSU. The value is the fact that that left tackle is wearing LSU's logo on his chest and on his helmet. The IP, that brand at LSU, had more value before that kid was ever born than he could ever give that brand. He's good enough for LSU to allow him to play there on their platform, and in exchange, what they get is his service. Where you realize the ultimate value is when you blend the two. Group licensing has existed forever in pro sports. Okay, group licensing meaning the big boy brands, they basically group themselves together and they're in bed with every pro sports organization. And at the conference and national level, from advertising perspective, they do it with college football too. That ocean of money is going to be redirected in the coming years into the NIL world. You know, your Learfields, your IMGs, you just hear that in a tagline on your local radio feed every now and then. Those are going to be monsters in this game. And down the road, what you're going to talk about is not so much, can I get 185 from this collective and 2.25 from this collective? You'll still have roster value, but the brand value. In other words, because I go play for the University of Texas and they have group licensing deals with 7 of the top 20 brands in America, brands whose commercials I see on TV every time I turn it on, just because I put that Longhorn logo on, I'm getting money funneled to me from those brands via group licensing deals. Ka-ching! Here's why I know we are going to redirect the ocean of NIL money that way. Because that way, guess who else enriches themselves? Guess who else deepens their pockets? Your local university. Because we have redirected and recentered the focus from darkroom, shady deals as you see them to, oh, you mean we once again realize it is our IP. It is our logo you're putting on that gives you a little value. And that's going to flow straight through that athletic department. That's where we're headed. It's not there yet. So right now you still have a lot of these fights about whether your athletic director will turn over donor lists to your local collective organizer and which ones will they and won't they endorse, and can coaches control it. It's a mess right now, just like it's a mess when that little baby of yours has to first learn to take those steps, but eventually they're 9 years old and they can function on their own to some degree. Still need guidance at 9 years old, but they can walk, they can talk, they can chew gum at the same time. NIL is going to look a whole lot different down the road. So I know it seems like the end of the world right now at Iowa, and I know at Ohio State you guys have been none too pleased with how things have operated behind the scenes. It's not going to happen overnight, but the premier brands out there, and that includes the Iowas of the world, group licensing is ultimately, and brand value in NIL, that's ultimately going to be what sets you apart, and you'll be fine. But again, not overnight. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure to leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.